Welcome to the Wave Strength. Innovative solutions for a secure retirement. Presented by Pacific Life.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on another exciting episode of the Wave Strength webinar series. I'm your host, Jim Breen, Head of Marketing with Pacific Life's institutional team. And this is a special episode of our Wave Strength series. We're actually coming to you live from our headquarters in Newport Beach, California. So a big win for me. I just want to thank my production crew, the staff, and the team, and all of the folks who put this in motion to be able to facilitate these inside our building here. And we're really excited to jump into the conversation today. We're talking about Decoding Retirement, a white paper that Dr. Chi has been working on for many months. The release is today, so another milestone thing to be very excited about. But before we jump into that, I'd love to introduce our panel here. So to my immediate right here, Jackie Reardon, coming out here from the East Coast. You got here last night. You've got to leave right after the event here. Just we're real grateful for you coming to join us from Franklin Templeton. And Jackie, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me back again.
Absolutely.
Love being here.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. What I understand is probably the weather.
Definitely.
Definitely
getting my fill of some sunshine before I have to go back.
Right on. Chris McGlynn, thank you so much for joining us. Chris, really appreciate you being here, also from the East Coast, coming out to join us today for the event.
Yes. Yeah. Also here for the weather, too. So thanks for having me out here, Jim, especially this time of the year. It's the best time to come out. So thank you.
Absolutely. And Dr. Chi, really appreciate you joining us. And as we dive a little bit further into the show today, we're going to unpack the Decoding Retirement white paper. First, what I'd like to do to familiarize the audience with the host, we went around and kind of heard everybody's names and everything, but I'd love to get a sense of what each of us bring to the table in terms of experience, etc. Maybe the firm, of course, Chi, Chris, myself, we're with Pacific Life. Full disclosure, Jackie with Franklin Templeton. So Jackie, why don't we start with you? Perhaps you can share a little bit about your role, maybe some of the great work that you've done with the Voice of the American Workplace survey now 4 years in.
Yeah, great. No, so Jackie Reardon, I lead our U.S. client marketing organization for Franklin Templeton. But why I'm here today is I've had the esteemed pleasure of being involved with a research project that Franklin Templeton has been conducting with the Harris Poll for the last 4 years. And we actually rebranded this year. So in the last 3 years, we've been referring to it as the Voice of the American Worker because it has been a employee sentiment survey.
Okay.
But this year, we actually added the Voice of the Employer as well, hence the rebrand. So now we have 2 points of view, both the employee point of view and the employer point of view. We just published this research earlier this year, and it's been so great. No spoilers, but those two perspectives are actually not aligned. So there's been a lot of great conversations that we've been able to share around what are some of the key things that employees are looking for and specifically from their workplace or from their employer. I think that's been a bit of a debate in the past about whether or not people actually go to their employer for help with financial needs, but our research for sure says that they do. So it's been great to sort of compare where employers, for example, are putting resources behind. What tools are they making available to employees? What types of benefits and resources are they making available to employees? Are those the same things that employees are really looking for in order for them to, have a better path towards financial independence, create an income stream in retirement, feel financially secure across all areas? So I'm super excited to share any insights that I can today around some of those misalignments and, more importantly, some of the opportunities for alignment that we can collectively help employers and employees find.
Opportunities for alignment. I love that. And definitely, I think with what we have to share later in this episode of the webinar, a lot of opportunities. Chris, first, though, I'd love to ask that you share a little bit about your background, your role at Pacific Life.
Sure. So Chris McGlynn, I'm a director here on the Institutional Retirement Solutions team. And a large part of my role is going out and speaking with retirement plan advisors, consultants, and directly plan sponsors, really to get their perspective on their needs as it relates to defined contribution income, and then educate them about tools, resources, surveys, and different research that's been done in the market.
Fantastic. Great. And Dr. Chi, perhaps you can share a little bit about your role. You have a unique role at Pacific Life as a financial economist at the company here, very unique for Pacific Life. Perhaps share a little bit about your role.
Yeah, sure. So, hello, everyone. This is Chi-san. I'm the financial economist on the institutional team at Pacific Life, specifically the participant experience and the financial education team. And as you may already learn from the name of the team, I guess my job is basically to conduct research to understand how to better improve our participant experience when they are adopting the lifetime income solution, and how to help them to improve their financial education, their knowledge level, and how to ultimately increase their, security during retirement. That's kind of basically my role.
Fantastic. Great. So we've talked a little bit about, financial experience, providing those viewpoints, also bringing the solid team to help understand and unpack what that is. And what I'd love to be able to do here, we actually have a video. We went out onto the street with a camera to just ask folks, where are you in your retirement journey? And so I'd love to just set the stage for a moment here. Let's roll the video and see what people had to say out on the streets. We're here today to discuss with people on the street whether or not they're confident about the plans that they've made for retirement and whether or not they wish they had different solutions or other options for them while they were planning. Let's get started. Why do you think so many people are unprepared for retirement these days?
I think older people who are in my generation, we thought a lot more about it, and people in the younger generations, I think they're just trying to make ends meet, so they don't have time or the energy or to even think about it. We had retirement programs with our work, and now they don't. So I think the younger generations face a much bigger problem than we do.
It's never too late. It's never too late to start. Whether it be in investments, whether it be in real estate, whether it be in just saving, just making a plan and being disciplined enough to put a certain amount of money away each week or each paycheck. The old rule is the 10% rule. Take 10% of your paycheck, put it in the bank. Never touch it. That would be and it's never too late to start.
I think the thing that's really important that I probably didn't understand is time value of money, and to understand up front that you keep working at it, and it's not that hard as long as you keep working at it and have a plan.
I'm there now. I mean, I'm retired and living on my income, my Social Security, and then I have stocks and bonds and stuff. But yeah, I'm kind of like that. I have it, but I don't really want to spend it.
Why?
I don't know. I know I've been living my whole life for this, and then now I could do things, but there's other things. I live with my daughter and grandson, and so I'm looking more towards making sure they have a good life.
I don't know that a lot of people are bringing things to me. Let's put it this way. My current employer says you put yourself in the 401k and have a nice day. And so I certainly do that because they give me free money, and it's silly to give free money away. I think the key is to understand what your expenses are today and how different they'll be in retirement. For the most part, you have the same expenses except for travel and a few things to and from work. To me, my biggest concern is healthcare. Healthcare used 40 years ago wasn't a big deal at retirement. Today it is.
A lot of people are too scared to ask the questions. They don't want to perhaps share that they're not there. There's a lot of times where you're matching people, and you've got your friends that are have done really well, and they've already started that process, and you don't want to admit that you're not there. And so just ask questions. Don't be afraid. Be transparent and share. You have to share how much you have, but find out the best ways to do it.
Wow. Very, very interesting video. So impactful, right? Especially hearing the gentleman towards the end say, some people are just afraid to ask the question. And it could be just as simple as that. Those of us building the solutions, working on the solutions, focused on the solutions, we think, well, why doesn't everybody know about this? Or why can't? But if somebody at the end of the road just feels uncomfortable asking the question, right? So financial literacy, right? Maybe we could unpack financial literacy a little bit. Before we jump into it, though, I'd love to just cue our guests. Again, guests, thanks so much for joining us and being with us. And I want to let you know that we want this to be an engaging opportunity. Feel free to ask questions in the chat itself. And also, as you'll see, as you continue to watch, there will be QR codes that'll pop up on the screen that'll direct you to unique opportunities inside of our live event here, one of which will be live polling that will allow us to, as a group, and including you and the audience, bring you in to hear what you think about some of the questions we're going to ask. So let's, though, jump back into that question, financial literacy. What a telling opportunity there with the folks on the street there. But Jackie, maybe we could start with you. What are some of your thoughts about where folks are with financial literacy right now?
I think one of the things that's been challenging across the board is that I think collectively we've done a really good job of reinforcing the fact that retirement, something that you have to plan for. And how lovely to see those people out in the street. Some of them are already retired, right? Like they were planning for this their whole life. What I think we're finding, particularly in our research, is that people, particularly younger generations like millennial, Gen Z, millennials have been the largest portion of the workforce for quite a while now. So we're talking about a majority of the workforce are saying, I get it. I know I should be saving for retirement, but I have so many other financial needs before I even start to think about that, or in addition to that I need help and resources on. So please help me with budgeting. Please help me with debt. I have student loan debt. I have medical debt. I think that that's the piece of the puzzle from a financial literacy standpoint that collectively we have an opportunity to help support folks with, which is, yes, retirement is a big piece of the puzzle, but let's think about it through the framework of your more holistic financial picture. And we're even seeing in our research about half of respondents, millennials, are saying, I've put off other key financial milestones like retirement, like saving for retirement or buying a house because I'm so underwater with student loan debt, right? So I think we collectively have to recognize that people are not just sort of like all the same, and they're also not, they don't have just one financial milestone or priority. Again, retirement, such a big deal. We have to get it right, but we have to address all those needs that come before it.
These unique journeys, right? Yeah. Each of us are different, right? Even the four of us sitting here, each of us could tell a unique story, compelling nonetheless, but a unique story that's special to us. And so the way in which we're going to engage retirement or anything really, right, could be the way in which I engage my kids in sports or food or that we eat for dinner or whatever. All of us have that different story to tell. So it makes sense, right? For retirement solutions, the journeys would be somewhat different as well. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, what Jackie said it very well. The only thing I might add is sometimes it's not just, it's knowing the right questions to ask, because sometimes you don't even know the questions, right? And everybody is unique. And if you don't have that foundation or you don't have the resources available to be able to go ask the right questions or have those questions presented to you, that having that allows another avenue to be open completely too. And that's one of the things that, as Jackie described, is very unique and customized to each individual, that in many cases causes that momentum to be lost because it's just so overwhelming. Like, where do I start, right? Where do I start? And then once I reach a certain point, when does that start to become comfortable? Because there's so many unknowns, so many variables that go along with it. But the good news is these types of surveys and research helps to align a lot of that customization for each of these participants too.
Can I just add something?
Please, Jackie.
Too?
Yeah.
I love what that gentleman on the street said about there's a fear factor too, right?
Yeah.
Or a feeling of like, I don't want to admit that I haven't been doing all this work all this time, or that I don't know where to start, right? So to Chris's point about like, I don't know where to start, the longer that goes on, they're also in a situation where people are like, well, now it's gone too long, and now it's even weirder if I ask for help. So of demystifying that feeling and making people feel like they're supported no matter where they are in that journey.
Yeah, and that's so true. Chi, please, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the discussion.
Yeah, I actually want to angle back to what Jackie just mentioned here. I also feel, exactly the same feeling like the gentleman mentioned. I think people sometimes are so scared to admit that I don't know about that. Will that make me look bad? So that's why I think from my perspective, from the research perspective, it's very important. That's exactly what we did with Decoding Retirement. We both measure people's subjective perceptions about their knowledge level and also their objective knowledge level, and to see whether there's a gap between these two measurements. Because, people sometimes when you ask people how much you know about, let's say, personal finance, people like, oh, I need to look good. So I would tell people like, oh, I know a lot. But if we use a set of systematic quiz questions to test their financial literacy score, will probably tell us a different story. That's exactly what we found from the Decoding retirement study. We see like a large portion of our respondents, there is a misalignment between their objective knowledge level and the subjective perceptions. And I think, to me, the group need most help, in my opinion, will be the people who are overconfident about their financial level. They think they know everything, but turns out that based on their quiz score, it's not that good. And for this group of people, why I think it's most important, because first, us as an industry, we need to first help them to break that positive illusion about how much I know. Then you can encourage them to attend those financial education programs, those financial wellness programs. Otherwise, they think, oh, I know everything. I don't need it, right?
Yeah.
So that's basically a very interesting finding we found from our Decoding retirement study.
And before we follow up with what you just said, I'd love if we could run the graphic that shows the QR code. So those just joining us, Dr. Chi has recently completed a fantastic white paper called Decoding Retirement, and that is what we're basically unpacking here. We are trying to decode retirement. And if you scan that QR code, you'll head to the landing page. You can read some of the key insights from the white paper we're talking about. In addition to that, you could go ahead and download the white paper, which is live today. So there's a form on there. You go ahead, enter your information, you download that PDF, and you can have a look either while we're unpacking this together or after the fact. And feel free to reach out to us, too, if you have follow-up questions. But, follow-ups to what she just said. I mean, very interesting, insights, especially connected to what not only we watched, but what she's learned in the white paper research.
We found something similar too, and I love that idea of really focusing in on the overconfident. We asked a couple questions, like, as you can imagine, most of the big concerns people have when thinking about retirement are like housing cost, healthcare cost, income savings. We asked a series of questions that basically, highlighted the fact that those are the key concerns. Yet people said, I'm going to rely on Social Security and Medicare. And then right after that, they said, but I don't know anything about Medicare, and I can't really, it's not clear to me like how much money I would get from Social Security. So with that like 1, 2, 3 punch, you're like, well, like, of course these folks need some more education, some advice, some access to resources, because they are relying heavily on something or planning to in the future, yet they don't have the knowledge set, or they're confused about those two key things that are going to be like the backbone of their future life and retirement. So I completely agree with that. It's almost proving to folks that there's a gap in knowledge so that they actually are motivated to go do something about it.
And also, I want to add to that, I think, financial literacy has been a very hot topic, not only in private sector, but also in academia. And I'm actually glad because of this attention, we made a lot of progress. But at the same time, I think I just saw the linking post from Dr. Lusadi, which is the team who developed that, the objective measurement for financial literacy, which has been wildly tested across not only this country, but globally. We made a progress. We want to drive more and more attention on financial literacy, but we still see there's an inequality between different groups. Yeah. And we found is from our Decoding retirement study, certain groups are definitely fall behind. So I guess for us, the next question is for those people with different background, how we can help them differently, how we can customize the education to different group of people.
Which kind of ties into maybe unique tools that unique journeys would benefit from, right? Each person, as we talked about in the beginning, is on their own journey. And how can we create tools, or what tools need to be created in order for us to meet people where they are in that journey? I mean, Jackie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we're taking like a one-size-fits-all approach in every single way in our industry, and then also all over the place. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't resonate with people. The specific language we use, et cetera. And it even goes back to what Chris was mentioning earlier too, around if you're not getting people where they are, then you're going to miss this opportunity to pull people into a system that they're feeling already super anxious and less than for not being a part of. So it's something that we absolutely have to solve for as soon as possible.
Yeah, that idea of personalization is huge, right?
Yep.
How can we personalize that experience to make it unique? Because it's not a one-size-fits-all. It'd be akin to us walking into the shoe store and they're saying, here's your size 8. Well, but I'm a size 10. Well, that's we have shoes. Here's the shoe.
Right.
You know, but Chris, I may have cut you off. I apologize.
No.
It sounds like you were going to chime in there.
No, I was just going to I think, add to the important points that have been made here. And as participants get closer to retirement, right, they're getting closer to this phase of life that they don't have really any experience with prior. And now they have to prepare for it, right? So they know what they've learned throughout their journey so far. And that's receiving a paycheck and that's saving money, right? But now all of a sudden, you're not receiving a paycheck from your employer anymore. And you have, if you've saved in your 401k, a sum of money, right, to now last you for the rest of your life and the other, whatever else you might have as well, too. So they're put into a position where really there's very little experience they've had in the past. And so these resources that are talked about are so crucial because even the folks that think they know, right, are now in this unique position and have to adjust those assumptions that they've probably been operating on all along during their working life too.
Fantastic. Chi, I want to hear what you have to say, but I want to engage our audience on a couple things real quickly. Don't forget, you can add your thoughts into the chat section of the LinkedIn Live. We want to hear from you. Please ask those questions. We'll do our best to get to all of them if we can. And if not, we will connect with you after the event. But in a moment, we are going to put up our first Poll EV QR code, which you'll scan with your device and jump into the conversation so we can hear what you have to say about the conversation. But Chi, please go ahead and share your thoughts, if you could, about what we were talking about a moment ago.
Yeah, I think the personalization is also a very hot topic from the industry. We hear from people keep talking about that. But I think what we found from the Decoding retirement study is actually the first step of personalization is to know your participant. Yeah. It's not only about their age, their income, their gender. Those are very basic information. But instead, I think what we find from the Decoding retirement study is that their investment habit. For example, the measurement we use is our time preference, like their spenders or their savers. Those kind of very, inner part of the people will also impact their decision making, and also how is their adoption process will look differently from other people, right? So that's why I think when we talk about personalization, the first step is to get the plan sponsor, the employers, to understand who are our participants, what they need based on their unique character, not only their age group, right? So I think that there's definitely a long way to go, but I think we're on the right direction. And also, I think we're going to talk about that later in this session as well, the behavioral barriers and how we can first understand what are those, mental blocks to prevent people make that selection, and how we can use strategies, those innovative strategies to help them overcome that.
Yeah, those mental barriers, indeed. I'd like to jump into our first poll question here. And so the first question that we'd love to ask the group, go ahead, everybody, scan with your device that QR code, and we'll go into the first question here, and it'll be shown on the screen here in a moment. But the question that we want to ask first is, what percentage of females are more likely to report low financial literacy than males? So again, the question is, what percentage of females are more likely to report low financial literacy than males? Interesting question. Let's go around here. Jackie, what are your thoughts?
I'm not surprised. I think every single year that we've done our survey, we have a bunch of different demographic slices where we see an emphasized result. So if the average says 50%, we'll see specific groups that have a higher percentage. And there's a lot of questions we've asked around feelings of security, or feeling like you have a plan, or are you ready for this, or is the current economic environment impacting you? And oftentimes women are the key group where we see an emphasized result, where they're feeling less secure, they're feeling less likely that they're going to meet some key milestones in the future, like financial independence.
Okay. Very good. Yeah. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, agree with what Jackie shared too. It's so important, and that goes back to the customization, right? Meeting everybody where they are at each specific point in their life, and based on their backgrounds and their experiences and who they are too. So great work being done.
Okay, G.
You should ask me this question.
You know the answer. Oh my God.
But I would definitely say, I think the peer impact is also very important, because where goes, we support each other. So I think that's why it's very important to have those kind of dedicated working group for the females in the workplace, to encourage that stuff, to share their successful stories. That would be I always say, inspiring and also encouraging.
Yeah, and even for younger generations, right? There's so many great organizations that sort of get to particularly girls and provide that financial literacy at a point in their life where they can, it's before they've sort of perhaps decided, oh, that's not for me, or started to feel that sort of insecurity around like, oh, maybe I should know this already. So agree with that support style.
Let's bring our audience in here. So I'm going to ask a different question here that our audience can engage with directly. So at what point in your financial journey would you consider using more financial tools to engage with your plan? So this is an interesting one, right? We want to loop in the folks that are joining us here live. So again, if you're joining us, scan that QR code, jump into that poll EV, and you might have to just add a name. You could add, an initial is fine, but jump into that question and you're going to see a series of selections there. We want you to choose the one that you feel is the right choice, and we'll get to that in a minute here. So at what point in your financial journey would you consider using more financial tools to engage with your plan? Being in the financial industry, I mean, right away, please, yes, please, right? But it's not the case with everybody, right? I mean, what are your thoughts? Chris, let's start with you this time. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think, again, it's part of it is the distribution and how that's being communicated, right? And the approach to allow folks to be able to engage with it in the right mediums that make sense to them, right? But I think, I think most of us can agree that the earlier the better for a lot of these things, but it's easy to kind of continue to push that down the road and not begin to plan earlier because it feels like it's so far away when you're talking about retirement, right? And that is what the industry, I think, has done a really, really good job at over the years, is putting the emphasis on saving for retirement and how to best do that, and has gotten a lot of engagement, but there's still more work to be done. So long-winded way of saying sooner the better. Today is the right time.
And Chris, earlier you said something about like meeting people where they are, and I feel like we've seen a lot of great work being done around sort of engaging people at specific milestones. So maybe, you get into your 401k when you first start your job because everyone's encouraging you to do that, but then you get married, and then you have a child, or then you buy a house, or then you reach a specific age milestone. And I think we collectively should also think about that as an industry of like, what are those key inflection points that maybe people will be like a little bit more likely to engage with financial tools and resources versus other times. And to your point, like, I'm just going to wait for it, like when I turn 65. Like, no, we want to get them engaged at different points.
All right, so let's go to the data here and see what people have to say. We're going to share that screen here and jump in. Wow, okay, 73%. Wow. Okay, 58%. So we have our answer. And I think that it for the first question, makes sense. What percentage of females are more likely to report low financial literacy than males? Chi, your thoughts on this? I know you pulled a lot of the data, but what are some of your thoughts?
Is that right answer? I'm not sure. I'm just
checking. Yes, it is the right answer. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's that's kind of what we are facing right now. We're very fully aware of this gap. But the thing is how we can reduce the gap. I guess that's the key question for us. And as a researcher, I think there's a lot we want to learn, like how we can use different, guidance or interventions to reduce this gap. But that's why I think from my perspective, for this Decoding retirement study, we want to set the foundation. And in the future, we want to actually develop more research to track this gap. Did we make any progress in the past few years? Anything we did right and anything we did wrong. I think that's very important for the future research plan.
Perfect. That's interesting. And, Chris, I mean, any surprises in what we saw on the screen there, do you think?
No.
Okay.
Not at all. I also did see the answers before this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
so
not why
it's kind of prime.
Yeah.
Talking about, though, Chris, I'd love to ask you a question. With all the work that you do out in the field, I mean, you're really hearing, where people are and what the needs are out there as you're engaging with plan sponsors, plan advisors. And to that, as you're having those conversations, with the retirement plan sponsors and the plan advisors, and, what stories are resonating most around why lifetime income solutions are needed and their defined contribution plans?
Yeah. No, thanks for asking, Jim. It's for so long. If we look 30 years ago, there were 90,000 defined benefit plans in place, pension plans, that pensioners knew that they were going to receive a benefit for the rest of their life, right? As of 2020, I think it's around 23 to 25,000. So there's been a big shift in that market, right? So now DC plans are being looked at as a potential solve now for that to create income. And when I'm out there and meeting with folks, we hear a lot of the same things around this. And the best way I can describe it, to your point about a story, is I go back to a few months back. We were sitting at the dinner table, my family and I, and my 15-year-old daughter, Haley, who's in 9th grade, brought up a subject that she brings up almost twice a week. We could set her watch to it. She said, "Mom, Dad, could I have more screen time on my phone?" And for those that may not know what screen time is, it's a setting on your Apple phones where you can limit the amount of time that they get on their phone before all their apps just kind of shut down, right? So my wife and I had actually talked a few days prior to that, knowing that she'd bring it up, and we wanted to be prepared for the next time she did. And so what our plan was when she brought it up this time was, we said, "Haley, how much additional hours do you think you should get?" Because right now she's receiving 3 a day during the week and 5 a day on the week ends. So it's 25 in total. She said an hour extra each day. So 32 hours. She said, "Okay, fine. 32 hours. We'll try it out. But what we're going to do is we're going to front load you all of your time at the beginning of the week. But once you run out, that digital bank runs dry, you're done until Sunday begins again." She's like, "Okay." I don't know how it's possible to be on your phone for 11 hours a day during the week when you're attending school 6 to 7 hours a day. But she ran dry by Friday, right? Wow. So she was out and had to wait till Sunday. The following week, she was done by Thursday. "Hey guys, Mom, Dad, can we set the time per week? And can I also have a little bit of extra time?" was her comment, right? So now we gave her an extra half hour. We met her in the middle, but we still have it lasting her throughout the week. And what I got from that was a lot about what we're seeing in market when we're meeting with these retirement plan advisors, these plan sponsors. It's, as was mentioned before in the research and in the surveys, everybody's different, but even individuals are different based on their availability of these resources that they have, right? Because at some point, those resources will affect quality of life in a positive or a negative way based on those resources. Also, making things easier to understand, daily versus weekly, weekly versus monthly, monthly versus yearly, putting it in terms we understand a bit more. And then also really it comes down to the integration, the technology being in place to allow this type of thing to work, like the screen time. Having that integration, without that, we'd be taking their phone every night like we used to do, right? But now Apple's built this ingenious idea to allow us to be able to gauge this in the best way.
That's so interesting. I've a 10-year-old, who will quickly be at the same stage as your daughter, and that's actually a really fantastic idea. My wife and I might have to have a conversation to maybe implement that. Devices are not we're not using the devices as frequently at that stage, but my goodness, what a great idea. Yeah, and it sounds like it's working.
It does. It works very well. I would recommend not front loading the time, but giving them time each day too. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Any thoughts, Jackie or Chi?
I think what I heard is the same story. And actually, I think I talk about that in one of my latest research published, is that, the landscape of the retirement plan changed a lot. Used in the old time, we call it 3 leg stew. That's a social security pension plan plus your personal saving. Now it's officially changed to the 2-leg stool stage. We only got the, whatever you save in the defined contribution plan and the Social Security. And turns out a lot of people didn't realize the change. So that's why I think in my paper, I highly, I kind of highlight that this reduction part in this guaranteed portion can have a huge impact for our future retirees. And the most dangerous thing is they didn't realize that guaranteed portion got huge reduced because of the change of the retirement plans. So that's why I think, we're trying to bring back that pension elements back to defined contribution plans. That's exactly why we're sitting here and talking, right? So, and I think from my perspective, I just want to understand more about, yes, we see the need, and also we see how those guaranteed solutions can help our future retirees, why they don't use it. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the biggest challenge for my research, actually.
I love that you just mentioned that too. Some of the best calls to action, I think, in our survey this year is around, employers are doing so much. They're providing such diverse and really modern solutions to folks from a tool, resource, and benefit standpoint. However, they're frustrated because many employees are not engaging and taking advantage. So we asked a few questions around why, and it was really, really surprising to see 50% of employees said they don't even know that these benefits exist. And then even worse, about 72%, and both of those stats are emphasized for the younger generations, 72% say, I know it's there, but I don't understand it. And one of the key ways that they don't understand it is because they have a hard time assigning a monetary value to that benefit. So to your point, all this great work's being done to create great benefits and tools and resources, and employers are really stepping to the plate because they hear the call of their employees. But we have to figure out a different mechanism to make sure that people are aware that these great benefits exist and that they truly understand the value that they're getting. Because if they're left to their own devices to use all their money all at once, or they could have access to something that can help meter that and have them secured for life, what do we have to do to sort of articulate that value to employees so that they understand their current picture and they want to take advantage of it?
I'd love to jump into the second polling question because it ties into what we're talking about here. So folks, get your phones ready, scan that QR code, and you can jump in and join us in the conversation for this live poll. And the second question that we're going to unpack here is, financial literacy is positively linked to financial well-being. Studies show. High financial literacy correlates with what percentage higher financial well-being scores, all right? And our options are 5%, 20%, 45%, or 60%. So we'll give it a moment for folks to scan that, jump into the chat, and we'll be there in a second to see what the results are. But thoughts about this to the group here, financial well-being versus financial literacy.
I have just a quick one, and it kind of ties together what Chris mentioned earlier too, which is it's not just a matter of knowing it. It's also what's the context? How does it relate, right? So, you could give somebody a book to read on all things financial related, but what does this mean to me, my family, my personal situation? That's sort of that added piece of the puzzle from a, meeting people where they are, personalization standpoint that we have to get to.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the data and see what folks have to say about that. All right. Looks like we had a technical glitch there with the poll EV, so we'll move on from that one, unfortunately. But the answer for that is 20%. 20% is the answer. So, interesting because a lot of the studies show that there is that direct, correlation. And it's important because we find ourselves, right, when we get into these habits, these habit-forming environments. Chris, we talked about your daughter a few moments ago, right, where we're in that situation as parents, perhaps, where it's like, how can we find a way to put them on the right path? And is there a way to connect the need for the right path to some of the things that they want to do, whether it's more time on the device or more time in front of the TV or whatever the case may be? Yeah. But this is great conversation. What I'd love to be able to do is let's throw that QR code up on the screen to have folks familiarize themselves with the key finding document as we dive more deeply into the conversation here. And again, for those joining us, you can scan the QR code and you can jump into the landing page that will allow you to help unpack the Decoding Retirement white paper. Also at the bottom of the screen to download the full version of that white paper going live today. So we're real excited to have that out there. So head over there and check that out. Let's talk about gaps for a moment here. There's a gap in how we as an industry can better provide resources, holistically across the board. As we saw with the video earlier today, there are folks that feel somewhat comfortable, folks that don't feel comfortable, folks that need help in the planning, folks that want to do it themselves. Let's talk a little bit about that gap. Jackie, perhaps we can start with you.
Yeah, I think the biggest gaps are related to sort of our myopic approach to finances. I think in most engagements are all about retirement. So it's just save a bunch of money and don't worry about it until you retire. And you'll probably should retire at the exact same time that everyone else does. And that means stopping work. And then you'll have this pile of money and then go move to Florida and play golf for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the key gaps is that we're not engaging people across the full spectrum of financial needs. How do I pay my taxes? How do I pay down debt? How do I manage healthcare expenses? How do I save for retirement? Or maybe I don't actually even want to retire, right? So maybe I don't want to move to Florida and play golf. No offense to people who play golf or live in Florida, but maybe my later years look a lot different than Chris's and Jean's and Jim's. Maybe I want to keep working, or maybe I want to start a new business. So we're not really engaging people in a way that is, one, personalized with context to their own situation, which I recognize is difficult to scale, but we have to just do a better job of doing that. And we also have to engage people with tools and resources that are the full spectrum of financial needs. One of the I think interesting tidbits we got from like the benefits that people are interested in and resources is pet insurance, for example, is one of like the top things that people are looking for, right? So that's an important something to people nowadays, and there's a financial aspect to it that they need help with. So we're just missing all these opportunities to provide, again, that holistic financial picture when it comes to tools.
Yeah, pet insurance definitely a hot button.
Hot button.
Yep, absolutely. Chris, gaps.
Yeah, I'd say based on what both G and Jackie, the research and surveys they've done, it's in line with that. It's making sure we're using the right assumptions and not assuming things that we think that we can assume, such as financial literacy being the same as annuity literacy. Even smaller things like that, I think we would call it. And then asking the right questions to the right audiences, Jackie, in the work that you've done, where making sure that we're putting the right question. We're not asking questions that don't have answers, right? How long are you going to live? How much money do you need, right? We're asking the questions that allow participants to focus in on an actual solution and an outcome and putting them in a position there. I think that's a couple of the key points that will help drive that gap or fill that gap.
Interesting. Chi, please.
I actually like what Chris just mentioned, asking questions. I think this is a very important part to narrow down the gap, because sometimes people, I think that's kind of also linked back to what actually happened in their mind. Sometimes people are so afraid to make a decision. Mm-hmm. They will stuck there. They will choose not to make a decision until they have to. But I think when we keep asking them those questions, it's not like to force them to make a decision, but kind of gradually to raise that awareness that, you need to start thinking about this. This is not the thing you have to do right now, but please start thinking about this. How you plan to spend during your retirement. Do you have a spending plan? Do you have an income plan? Also in terms of, all other important topics like paying off the student loan. Do you have a pay down plan for that? If so, how are you going to handle the payment to your student loan? So I think by asking those questions, it's very actually helpful to reduce the gap. Like, we don't want to force people to make a decision, but we want to raise their awareness that it's time to start thinking. And also, I think this kind of a strategy, I read a paper recently. That's kind of one of the strategy to help people overcome those kind of mental blocks. There is a very interesting example that you don't want people to actively make the choice. You give them two choices, yes or no. That's kind of the strategy to force people to start thinking to make a decision. Also, I think the author even mentioned that in order to make this strategy even more effective, you highlight the loss of not choosing that. For example, do you want lifetime income? If you don't want lifetime income, you have to bear that risk of living too long and running out of money during retirement. So this kind of I would say minor changes going to help a lot to reduce the gap.
I love that approach too. And I think to something you said earlier, it's almost like yes or no. And just by the way, a lot of people in your similar situation have said yes, right? Or like people your age or people, because I think that helps put some context behind it as well.
Yeah. How about behavioral circumstances? We hear, some of these hurdles and in-plan solutions from a behavioral standpoint. Chi, maybe you can share your thoughts on that.
Personally, I think this is a fascinating area for me because it's very interesting to understand why people won't make that optimized solution. So I just give you a very simple example to explain what are those behavioral biases. For example, this is a very classic example on the textbook. When you flip a coin, it either will be a head or a tail, right? But let's flip the coin, let's say 10 times, and you see the head 10 times. What is your expectation for the next time flip? A lot of people think, we already see the head 10 times. The next time won't be a head. The chance to see a tail will be very high. But turns out if you see from a pure statistical probability perspective, it's still 50% chance for the head and tail, right? So that's kind of the one type of bias people always have in their mind. So that same bias happened during the purchase process as well. And that's exactly one thing we test in the Decoding Retirement. We want to use more granular dollar amount to help people overcome that psychological pain when they're handling over the money out of their own pocket. Because that happened during the saving stage. We saw from the past study that why people don't get motivated to save, because people feel so painful to hand out their money even into their own saving account. So that's why if you break down this large saving goal into smaller portion, that will actually easier for people to onboard. That's kind of inspired me for our testing module as well. We're trying to test whether the same strategy will help people to increase their adoption for lifetime income, because when you decided to, let's say, annuitize part of your asset, it's kind of one-time decision for a large amount of your asset. But if we break that down into smaller portions, will that be easier for people to onboard, basically? And turns out the evidence shows yes, people will be more easy when we break down that into smaller portion. And also in the past DC Innovation Forum, I mentioned that it's also related back to their mental budgeting period, right? If you present an annual premium amount to someone who are paid, let's say bi-weekly, how are they going to handle this premium amount with other expenses during the same month? How are they going to plan this accordingly, right? So that's also something we feel like, link back to the personalization. You need to know exactly who is your participant, how they are paid, how they plan their monthly budget or bi-weekly budget. And that's kind of why we think know your participant is very important in terms of help them to adopt the option.
Absolutely. Any thoughts, Chris or Jackie, as to, your research or anything that's you've uncovered with the behavioral side of those in-plan solutions? I
think I would just share, I love what you're talking about there around sort of like the dollar amounts and sort of the bias, because, one of the things we're finding around, again, this diverse slate of tools and resources and benefits that employers are providing, employees still have a tunnel vision of like, please just give me more money in my paycheck, and also, increase match to my 401k. And I think we're assuming actually that it's just very clear to them what the benefit is, right? I can see the dollar amount, whether it's in my paycheck or it's related to a 401k match, versus all of these other great benefits that include help with paying down student loan debt, access to guaranteed income in the future, all of these great things, helping contribute to their own child's 529, like things like that. but it's harder for them to see the actual like one-for-one dollar benefit. So they're either not accessing them, they're not paying attention to them, and they're not, unfortunately, utilizing them, which would, kind of help them in the future have a more secured retirement.
Fantastic. Well, this has been such a great opportunity to have the three of you join us in the studio here live and to unpack not just decoding retirement, but also to these great conversations about Voice of the American Workplace Survey. Jackie, where could folks locate that if they were interested in checking it out?
It's right on the franklintempleton.com website, so you could just Google Voice of the American Workplace and it'll bring you right there. All the content is available for the public.
Fantastic. Yeah, a lot of great information to unpack there as well. So Jackie, thank you so much for joining us and being with us. Absolutely. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and be out here as well. And Dr. Chi, thank you so much for all the great work that you did putting the Decoding Retirement document together and the team that helped you with that. A lot of great work, a lot of great efforts that went into that, and hopefully a lot more great research to come out of it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I actually want to, thanks a lot people here, especially from your team. We have been working with this project for, I think, over a year right now.
Yes.
And finally, today is that day.
Yes, today is the
so
day.
really appreciate all the support from, Pacific Life's team.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Chi. It's been a pleasure. I want to thank my team here in the room for all the great work and the setup. And there they are, the great work of the setup that went into producing this. A lot of spinning plates, if you will. So great job and kudos to them. Also to you, our audience, for taking time out of your day to join us, to be with us here for this live event, to learn more about Decoding Retirement and Voice of the American Workplace. And again, thanks for joining us. Catch us on YouTube, Spotify, and Audible. Hit like and subscribe so you can stay constant and current with the content that we're putting out. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
This has been another episode of The Wave Strength, presented by Pacific Life. Don't forget to catch us on YouTube and make sure to subscribe. Although this webinar is presented by Pacific Life, the opinions and views expressed are those of the hosts and participants and do not necessarily reflect Pacific Life's views on any of the topics discussed. Unless otherwise noted, Pacific Life is unaffiliated with any other individual or company mentioned. Pacific Life is a product provider. It is not a fiduciary and therefore does not give advice or make recommendations regarding insurance or investment products. Pacific Life, its affiliates, its distributors, and respective representatives do not provide any employer-sponsored qualified plan administrative services or impartial advice about investments, and do not act in a fiduciary capacity for any plan. Pacific Life refers to Pacific Life Insurance Company and its subsidiary, Pacific Life and Annuity Company. Insurance products can be issued in all states except New York by Pacific Life Insurance Company, and in all states by Pacific Life and Annuity Company. Product availability and features may vary by state. Each insurance company is solely responsible for the financial obligations accruing under the products it issues. This webinar was recorded on March 21st, 2024.